We're live. Hi, it's Wednesday. I'm chopping my head off a little bit. That's a bit better. Gizzy's hogging the camera. There we go. I've got a new iPhone, so it's playing up a little bit. This guy here is pretty comfy. Hey gang, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Wednesday night, 8 p.m, it's Confessions of a Conveyancer. So, as you know, I'm all about sharing the knowledge out to you guys so that you can be more confident when you are buying and selling in the property market, so that you don't make any large financial decisions based on emotion. So that's what I'm all about, and that's why I'm sharing that knowledge out for you. So today, we're going to talk about strata title. Boo! Boring! We don't want to talk about... I can hear you. I can hear you. I know it sounds like crazy, boring legal jargon. It's not going to be. I'm going to break it down. It's going to be simple. It's going to give you really good knowledge so that you can have more confidence. Hi, Taylor. Thanks for joining. So strata title, what is it? All right. And why do you need to know what it is? This is what it's going to break down. So when you buy a house normally, that's the normal title that everybody knows about. When you buy a house, you've got your boundaries, and you buy everything that's on those boundaries, on the land in the boundaries, all the way up to the sky, all the way down to the ground. All right. So that's what a normal title is. But we're talking about strata. So I want to talk about the differences so that you can really understand. So what is a strata title? First of all, what type of property is a strata title? So we're talking units, townhouses, high-rise apartments, pretty much anything that has a smaller living space and has shared common properties. That's strata title. Hi, Julie. Thanks for jumping on. That's strata title. So we've established what it looks like, yeah? But what does it actually mean legally, and why do you need to know? All right, so I'm not going to go into the detailed, boring, complex stuff. I'm just going to give you enough information to make it really simple so that you understand, so that when you're looking at property or when you are selling your property, you understand, because knowledge is confidence, and we're not making financial decisions based on emotion. All right, so let's break it down. You've got a strata title, or you're looking at a strata title. They're broken into two areas. So all strata complexes, you think of your block of units, high rises, townhouses, everything is broken into two areas. Thank you, Michelle. Two areas. All right, area number one is the lot. That's what you're buying. And area number two is common property. So what the big thing here is, we need to establish what you're buying and what is common property. Now, you might think that that's common sense, and it is actually not. So let's just think about this room that I'm in now. Let's just imagine that this room is the unit that you are buying, okay? So all these walls inside in, that's what you are purchasing as a lot owner. The walls outside, you own jointly with all the other owners, and that becomes part of the common property. The common property does change a little bit for each individual property, but generally that's what it is. So let's just cover that again. This lounge room, minus Gizzy, is what you are buying. This is the lot. So you're gonna own the insides of the walls in. So that means you can paint it, you can renovate it, you can do whatever you want on the inside. The outsides of the walls out, you own jointly with all the other unit holders in that strata complex, and that forms part of what's called common property. All right, so we've just established that the outsides of the walls are going to be common property. So what else is normally common property? Any driveways, any shared driveways. In the metro areas, it often includes the balconies. That's right. A lot of the times the balconies you aren't even buying, even though you may have extended on what you're buying, that's often common property. Underground services. A common mistake I see is people assume just because they have a car spot that's next to their garage that they're buying that, but it may actually be common property. All right. So when you're looking at a property, we need to remember that there is those two things: what you're buying, the lot, what is common property that you will then be owning with all the other owners, which means you can't make any changes to the outside without getting approval from everybody else. All right, so they're the main things. So you're going to have that knowledge knowing that you break them up into what is common property and what you're buying. It's not really your responsibility to work out what is common property. That's where you would get some legal advice and say, I'm looking at this house, clearly define what the common property is, but it's so that you understand. I actually have a matter at the moment where a client came and saw me and they're buying a townhouse and there's only 2 on the block. They have a shared driveway, and at the end of the driveway there is an area that has been fenced off, and he believed that the area, because it was fenced inside of his yard and it had been gardened, as in it was going to be part of the area that he was buying. It was used, clearly it was always thought it was going to be part of the area that he was buying. But when I showed him, I said, that is actually common property. And it actually was not a part of the area that he was buying. So it's really important. A lot of people just take for granted and they just assume by looking at a unit that that's what I'm buying, that's the common property, where you really can't assume that, okay? So we've worked that out. So what does that mean in regards to insurance? We've just established that we have all of these areas that you share, okay? So if you have these areas that you share, that means that we have one insurance policy for the entire strata complex. That's right, one insurance policy. So normally your strata manager will organise the insurance policy. You will pay your strata manager levies, and that will include your insurance. So the good news is people sometimes freak out a little bit. They say, Strata, I have to pay all these extra levies. You know, that's too expensive. But you have to remember, you don't have to pay building insurance. So that's one less bill. They usually counteract each other. If you're going to be living at the unit, you would only get contents insured, your personal items. And if you were going to be renting it out, then you would just get landlord's insurance. So this information that I'm giving out, this is really important to a couple of different areas. Someone's got itchy ears. Can you see that little ear dance? Clearly Gizzy's not too interested, but isn't he good? So the people that this is important for is new home buyers. A lot of new home buyers buy units and townhouses to start off with because it's a really good, solid investment. You don't have to spend a fortune. You can usually afford it. 2, investors. A lot of investors will buy units. It's really important for them to have that solid rental return, and usually units do that. So this information can really apply to a large demographic of people that are buying and selling houses. So I want to go back now that we've established the different types of property, we've established about the insurance, that you would pay levies to your strata manager. I really just want to cover a couple more things about what those levies mean and some little trips and traps. And this is where this knowledge is really key when you're looking to either make an offer or sell a property. So you pay levies to your strata manager, which we've just discussed, and that covers your building insurance. Now, the levies that you pay your strata manager are split into 2 categories. 1, administration fund. So that's basically their fees, covering the insurance, covering small regular maintenance. So there may be some gardening on the driveways. There may be, some bin pickups or maybe shared electricity, something like that. For really large high-rise appointments, it can be cleaning in common property areas. So that's all your admin, your day-to-day running of it. Now that's really set. You don't have much say as to how much you pay in administration fees. Blah, 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 blah. The other one that you pay is your capital works fund, and that's exactly it. You all contribute money to go towards your capital works and things that you will have to pay in the future. So this is where you all vote on how much you want to put into the capital works. So here's the real kicker. You never get that money back. That money is never adjusted. That's it. So this can work in your favor and it can really not work in your favor. So this is where you need to be really, really clear. So generally, a really good strata manager will work out a budget as to how much you should all be putting into this capital works plan. And the reason you're putting it in is you may have a driveway that needs reconcreting in years, or you may need works to the roof, flooding, termites, things like that. So it's a really good idea to have some money in the kitty there so that it's not a huge bill that you all need to forfeit out, okay? However, you never get that money back. So let's just say you own a strata property for 10 years. Over that 10 years, you've put in $1,000 towards the capital works. At the end of it, you've put in, that's $10,000, but nothing has been done to the property to get that back. Does that make sense? You've been paying $1,000 in your capital works every year. You've been contributing, but nothing's really gone wrong. So you haven't had to get that money back, all right? So nothing's gone wrong with the property where you've had to say, we need to get that fixed, let's draw into that money. When you sell that property, you never get it back. So a really smart thing to do if you're selling the property is to find out how much money is in the kitty litter and do something. Say, hey, I put a motion forward, let's get the eaves painted. Or, you know, we've got a surplus in there. Why don't we get some new roof tiles and things like that? I actually had a situation earlier this year where a client said to me that they were selling their unit, and I suggested this to him. And he found out that there was, and he had owned the property for a long time. He found out that there was about $15,000 sitting in the capital works fund. And I said, go do something. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you can't get that money back. So they repainted the eaves, they put up a whole new front fence, and he ended up getting about $20,000 extra in his sale value for what he sold it for, because he used that money. That money was already there, sitting there waiting to go. So that's a really smart thing to think of as well. When you're a purchaser, we want to know how much they're contributing, yeah? So that's part of your conveyancer's job, to research that. But your job is just to know that those levies come into it. So I don't want to go into too much of the complex stuff. I really just wanted to give you enough information so that you can feel really empowered when you're walking through a strata property and not a little bit overwhelmed and scared. And another thing that I just really want to touch base on, which is really important, is, so we've established that, hi Ash, thanks for jumping on. We've established that when we're buying these strata properties or living there, what have you, we're generally in smaller living spaces. Hey Ben, we're in smaller living spaces. We're close together. We've got all these, you know, small living areas and shared spaces. All right. So how does everybody get along? How do you ensure that no one else is going to impact on your use, happiness of the property? And what are the rules? Simple. Every single strata scheme has to have bylaws. And a lot of new purchasers don't realize this, but those bylaws have to be in a contract. So you're allowed to ask for the real estate agent for a copy of the contract so you can get the bylaws. Now, a lot of the bylaws are very standard, but there's a couple that are really crucial. For me, it's animals. I wouldn't be able to buy a strata property that I was going to live in now if I wasn't allowed to take my dog. And I know that that might seem trivial, but it actually is quite a common thing. I mean, you can't just assume that because it's going to be your unit, you can just have animals there. There are often many times when the bylaws say whether you can or can't have animals. So before you go ahead and make that offer, read the bylaws, get your conveyancer to check them, and just so that you have an idea about your use and enjoyment of the strata properties. So I'm just going to recap a couple of things now. I'm really glad you stayed on because it was a little bit of a complex topic, but it's a super important one that people often overlook. So we talked about strata title. Let's break it down. A house, you get your boundaries. You get everything all the way up to the sky, all the way down to the ground, all right? Strata. This lounge room is your unit. You're buying the insides of the walls in, the outsides of the walls out. You're going to be owning with all the other owners, and also that's the common property. Included in that common property will be any driveways. And then that's where the kicker. That's where you need to find out before you make your offer, what's common property and what am I buying? Now, that is something your conveyancer, a lot of the agents would be able to help you with, but just so that you know as well. As I said, it's not as common in regional areas, but in metro areas, often verandas, things like that, they are not included. They can often be in the common property. And in more rural areas or, you know, like regional cities like Albury, the lines get a little blurred between what's common property and what's not, because people have lived there. They start to make their own gardens, and their gardens get a little bit bigger into the next door neighbour's garden. And so it gets a little bit blurred over time what people think they're owning and what is common property. So that's number one, what you really want to establish. So you know the differences there. Number two is knowing that you're going to have to pay levies for a strata property. Now, as I said, that shouldn't worry you. You shouldn't go, oh, it's too expensive. Yes, of course, it's an extra levy, but there are some things that are discounted. One, your rates with council is usually a fair bit cheaper. Two, you don't have to pay any building insurance because your building insurance is included in your levy. And bylaws. Check out the bylaws. Speak to your conveyancer, speak to the agent. They're actually really easy to read. So if the real estate agent can give you a copy of them, they're in the contract, you'll find them very easy to read. And also, if you've got any questions about strata, you don't need to pay for really detailed, complex advice before you go making an offer. This booklet here, Strata Living, this is free. You can get this from the New South Wales Fair Trading. They have a heap of free information there in really easy to read language. You don't need to get stressed, and it just gives you, as I said before, little pieces and pockets of really handy information so that when you are looking at purchasing a strata property, you can feel really confident walking in there that you have a fair idea. I do see a lot of people that sit down with me and I say, you know, have you bought a strata property before? And they say no. And then I explain it to them and they go, oh, but I was going to put a pergola on the outside and I was going to do this. And I said, well, that's fine, but you actually need to get approval from all the other owners. So it's not to be scared of strata, not at all. It's about having knowledge, understanding it so that you can make decisions not based on emotions. So that's it. This guy didn't move. Oh. That's Confessions of a Conveyancer, done again for another week. Thank you for sharing along, guys. I really hope that you're getting some really good knowledge from these information sessions. As I said, I'm really just about getting some good knowledge out there for you so that you get a little bit more grasp of what's going on. Reach out at any time that you want. Now, confession. I always forget to prep the confession at the end. What's going to be my... Oh, here's a good confession. I love going to the local salt rooms. It's been really good for my downtime and my sinus. I may or may not have accidentally had a little tiny sleep there tonight just before this, and I may or may not have been the person that snored. I ran out of there so fast. I woke up, I put my earphones out and I heard these people down the back going, oh, did you hear that person snoring? I knew it was me. I just went like this. So that's my confession. Anyone at the salt rooms tonight, it was me snoring my head off. I'm sorry. Girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. Anyway, gang, thank you. Thanks for joining Gizzo and I. We're off. And I'll see you next week. Next week, we are going to talk business tips. So check out my Instagram and my Facebook. I've been dropping some quotes every Wednesday talking about just some mentoring business tips, and a lot of those business tips you can take into your own personal development. So it doesn't matter if you're not an entrepreneur, grab that information, turn it around to your own personal environment. It may be you work for someone else. It may just be you just want to be a better person. Check those out. We're going to be covering some of them next Wednesday. Ciao.